Hello and welcome back to Go Create Craft. I'm Natalie and today we're going to be doing a bit of work in Affinity. So everything I do today you can do in Affinity Designer or Affinity Designer 2. And we're looking at assets and symbols. Now, assets and symbols can both help you with reusing designs in Affinity, but how they work is slightly different. They fix different problems. So what I want to do is kind of go through the motions with some design. So I've put some elements already on the page, and I will cover a little bit on how I made them if you want to kind of create along and do the same things I'm doing, or feel free to swap in your own elements. So you'll see that on the page I've got a page that I've titled elements, and that's just done by having an artboard added to your document. Now let's talk about the differences between the two, shall we? So let's make this full screen, that would help. So down in this bottom section we've got assets. Assets are where we want elements to go across documents. So it could be something used as a reference point, a framing, or it could be something as simple as a set of elements. So you can see in my assets at the moment I have a couple of groups, and these are actually from the book. So I've got a set of assets with a name. So in this case, it's motifs, borders, corners, and frames. And then I have subcategories within that. So I have flip and rotate because they're created using flip and rotate, and align and distribute because they're using align and distribute. Nice and simple so far. Now, what happens if I take one of these assets and change it? The truth is, not very much. It's not going to live update back to the assets folder, and it's also not going to live update to other copies either in your document or in other documents. So in that case, it's pretty safe. It's like a sort of data break. So the changes you make are isolated, which might be exactly what you want. However, when we want to be speed editing and applying changes across multiple copies, that's when we use symbols. So up in the top here, I've put my symbols section so that you can see it nice and clearly. We can create symbols, we can detach them. So when we detach a symbol, that basically means that any changes we make after that point is not going to be reflected back to the symbol. Again, nice and straightforward. Now, you can choose whether to synchronize your edits across all symbols or not. It's entirely up to you. You have that sync function there. Personally, I think that if you're using symbols, it's because you want that live editing functioning. So make sure this one is also turned on. Now I'm using the light UI, which is an update to Affinity. So you're going to see that mine's nice and pale on here. If you're using a black screen, again, you're going to see that it highlights very slightly differently to what you see on here, but it still should highlight. Now, let's talk really quickly about my assets, or my elements, I should say. So I've tried to really go careful to not mix up my terminology here. Elements. So I've created some flowers and some leaves. And just for those of you that may not have seen Affinity use this way very much, I thought I'd break down a little bit of what I've done. So Affinity has a really useful tool called Power Duplicate, and the keyboard shortcut for that is Ctrl and J. Now what's really good about Power Duplicate, if I get a shape, and I'm going to go for, let's go for a startle, and I'm just going to draw a shape. Now I am going to give that a colour that looks a little bit more flower-like, so let's go for purple. So here's our purple star. That's our original shape. We're then going to press Ctrl and J, and that's going to duplicate it in place. You can't see any difference. But if I rotate this shape slightly, and if I use Ctrl and Shift, I can actually resize it from the center, and I'm going to give it a different tone or tint. It's up to you which way you go. Okay. Now, if I press J again, so Control and J, it's going to twist it again. It's not going to change color, but it is going to apply another transform. So it's going to get smaller still, and it's going to apply the same amount of rotation again. And this time we can give it a different color. So we could go, let's go sort of, that's a bit too pale. Let's go back up here. Ooh, that's a bit too, there we go. So we have enough star, and we're going to do the same again, and we'll go next later. Same again, next later, and same again, and lighter still. You're getting the hint, and so on and so forth until you get to white if you want. So you can see that we've created almost a spiral of designs, and by using those different colors we can create different effects. So that's how these flowers here are created. What I've done is in the very last center shape, I've applied a gradient. So you've got a gradient tool here. You just draw from the center outwards, set it to elliptical, job done. If you want to change the color, just click in the little color section, and you can click each one of these and change the color. Now, you might be thinking, well, hang on, that one looks really different to that one. What's the difference? And it's something so simple, so simple. So if we go inside our group here, you're going to see that we've got a load of FXs down this side of our layers panel. And all that is I've applied a outer shadow. So it just helps to make the flowers pop a little bit more. And that's why it looks different. I've done exactly the same to make the flower centers here. So if I zoom in, all I've done is use the cloud tool to make the outer shape, rotated the duplicate slightly and shrunk it down, and so on and so forth, and changed the colour of each layer. And we end up with something that looks like the centre of our flower. Same here. What I've done is I've created those duplicates, but I haven't rotated. And then in this one, what I've done is I've actually embedded those shapes inside that outer shape, and I've applied a blur. This gives us a gradient which isn't fixed to being linear or radial. So when you want to do a nice blend that is going into a bit more detail, that's a good way of doing it. So if you want to just zoom in that a little bit quicker, so you can just see how those shapes are built. So these are exactly the same shapes, just this copy has a Gaussian blur on the shapes applied through the FX panel. Okay, leaves. So you can do a really simple leaf just using the teardrop tool, and I've just put a crescent in to give it some form and a gradient over the fill for the leaf. And I've put that crescent inside our teardrop. Job done. You have a leaf. Now if you want to get all fancy, what I did here was I had my teardrop shape that is my main body of my leaf, and duplicated it. I moved the origin down to this bottom middle point here, and then I slightly rotated it and resized it using Ctrl and Shift again to get this point here. And then just did Ctrl J, Ctrl J, Ctrl J, Ctrl J. You get the idea, all the way around until you get to this bottom section here. Group that all, duplicate it and flip it using the flip tool up here and flip horizontal, and then weld it all together and you get a leaf. What I've then done is also had the opportunity to do another copy using all those individual shapes, and I've applied a different tone to each one. And you can see then when we apply the Gaussian blur, it's going to get you a nice variegated leaf. Now I've done quite a simple version there, but if you want to go back in and kind of add highlights and things, you can use additional shapes to do so. So those are our elements, And let's go to assets, and you can go create new category, and we'll call it assets and symbols exercise. And it's going to come up with a blank set of assets for you to populate. Now, important thing is when we're working with assets and symbols is to remember to group. So what I should be able to do is, let's start off with these ones here. If I go over the top here, you can see this flower here just has one outside bounding line. This one here, however, has an inner one here. So that means that object there isn't grouped. So let's click off at the moment, highlight those two, and we're going to group them together. So we've just got one bounding box. Really important. And we can just drag our box across, and we're going to go to click and drag into our assets. It's going to give you a little blue line there. Drop it in. So all those shapes are now assets that we can use in other documents. Any changes that we make won't be updated to the assets. So if you decide that you want to do a different colour, your assets aren't going to change. So it's a really good way if you want to build up different colour variations. I'm going to do the same, if it'll let me, with these two here, because those two are ready to go. Drop those in. And these are ready, so let's drop those in. And this one's ready as well, so we can drop that one in. And this one too. So you should have some assets that look a bit like this. And that means that, like I said, we can go into any document and we can add those same flowers to that document. I'm just going to delete this little star there. And I'm just going to delete these two out of the way. So here we go. Now what I've done here is I've used a little bit of a trick or a cheat. So if I go into this leaf here, you can see I've got exactly the same group as our original leaf, which is this one, but inside I've just dropped a colour adjustment. And to do that, just use your little half and half circle. And I just use selective colour and set it to green. It's the easiest way of doing this particular kind of tweak, is the word I want to go for. Now that we've got those as assets, they're locked. So let's get these. If it let me, oh, thank you. And we're going to either drop them in there, or we can just go create. Ta-da! Now, to make your life simple, you can give all your symbols a name. So obviously, as I'm doing this kind of on the fly, it's going to be a bit time consuming to do that, but feel free to take the time. And I'm going to start a new artboard, so I'm just going to click on that plus to start a new artboard, or you can do insert artboard at the top. And in the layers, I'm just going to give that a name of symbols, and I can type. There we go. So let's drag in one of our symbols. Now at the moment, if we click on one of our old elements, you'll see it's updated to being a symbol. So that means that any change that we make is going to affect our originals. If you don't want it to happen at the moment, highlight them all and just go detach. And you'll see they'll all go to group. That way you keep a copy of your originals. Likewise, if you want to add yourself in another set of the actual symbols so that you can see the changes on one sheet, you can do. But for now, I'm just going to bring in a flower. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more. We can make that flower a bit bigger if we want to. And so long as we are clicked on the symbol layer, it's not going to change the size of the symbol itself. If we were to change the size of the groups, however, that is going to reflect back in your symbol. So, case in point, I'll show you with the center of the flower. I'm going to use Ctrl and Shift because I want to resize from the center, and I'll resize it. If we release the shift. So there we go. We've resized that there. And if we look in our preview here, we can see that that flower center is much bigger in this one than in our other symbol here. That means that if we have lots of symbols, so I'm just going to drag some out here. Oh, careful not to do it within the layer. So make sure you click on the symbol. Oh, I'll put another one in there. Another one over there. And we'll go back inside that symbol. Now, I'm going to try and fit these on screen so you can see it happening in real time. I'm going to press and hold Ctrl. And I'm going to resize this back into the center of my flower. Like so. And you can see as I'm doing that, it's reflecting in the other instances of that symbol. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, if you want to then have another flower that is the same but different color, you're going to create another instance of that symbol, and you might resize it. It's up to you. You can have it a bit squished so it has a bit of perspective if you want, but go roughly the same size. I'm going to detach this new symbol, and it's going to go to being a group in our layers palette. And I'm going to click on my center shape. Now, if you want to keep that center shape the same, click on the layer below. You'll see why in a minute. So I'm going to go and let's do selective color. Would be really easy to kind of mask the two. So I'm going to go for something that is going to be a bit more obvious. I'm going to go for hue, saturation, and lightness. No, the default for these is 0 to say that there is no change. Now, obviously, we do want to change, otherwise we want to bother going to all this trouble. So I'm going to increase its saturation. It's going to give us a bit of a different tone. Now, what I would say is what you're seeing on screen is a lot more saturated than what I'm seeing on my monitor. But that's a story for another day. And we can do a hue shift. So straight away, you can see that we're going to that nice sort of tinge of blue for a cornflower. But our centre of our flower's gone pink. Not so good. So I'm just going to close that. You've got two options. You can drag it down a level so that we're just applying that layer to that back layer. Or you could use a bit of selective colouring. But for something as simple as this, just drag it down. And now that we've got that there, we're going to select the group and we can create that as a symbol. So we now have two symbols that are potentially the same, but because we've put in that extra colour layer, we've got two different colours. And this is a way that we can kind of build on our libraries really super quickly. So I'm going to put that there. And you might even decide to have another one. So drag another one out, detach it. I'm going to drop that down. And because we've already got that hue saturation adjustment there, we can double click and let's give it another tweak. So we might go there. We might take the saturation down a bit and we might make it a bit darker. Maybe not quite so low on the saturation. Means we've gone darker. So about there. And the weird thing is, our eye is almost shading that centre to suit the petals around the outside. It's a trick of the mind. So, go back to the group, create, and we have another version. So far so good. So we've got our kind of feature flowers. And let's bring in a couple of our little dainty flowers. I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger, like so. And I'm going to have another one that I'm going to resize and twist it a bit. So as long as we do that with that symbol clicked, it's not going to interfere our symbol. Now, if we were to go in here and rotate it in here, on the other hand, you can see that we now have dancing symbols. So that's just something to bear in mind, like so. And again, we might tweak the colours on that. This time, because it's all tonal, I'm just going to go on to the top there. And let's do selective colour so that you see what I'm talking about. And we're going to go to the yellows to start with, because we've got this kind of orangey tone which kind of straddles several different colours. So we can increase the magenta in that to make it a deeper orange, or we can take it away to push it more towards the yellow. So you can see that starts to make it blend in better with the centre of our flowers. And we can go OK. Now, if we go in here, you can see that because I've done it to that original symbol, this one is now a different colour to our base flower. If you do this by accident, that's okay. We can go and undo. It is undoable, so don't panic. And I'm going to go right back before we added the colour adjustment. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new symbol, if we're lucky. So I'm going to detach and create. Thank you. So I've got this one here. And now we're going to do that same process. So half and half circle, down to selective colour. And we're going to take out the magenta. And you could take out a little black or put a little in, depending on how strong you want that yellow to be. So if we take it out, we can see that's starting to blend in nicely. Okay, so there we go. And we can take another copy of that, and we'll drop that over here. And we'll take another one there, and we'll drop that in there. We're going to take our leaf. And we'll pop that in there. Make it a little bit bigger. And we'll send it to the back. So the quick way to do that is Ctrl or Command, Shift, and open square bracket. And we can duplicate that. So we can still use the Ctrl and J and do power duplicate if you want to. I'm just going to shrink that down. Let's bring in another leaf, slight different tone. Drop it in there. And another leaf, different tone. Rotate it. And we'll drop that in there. And let's take those two. And we'll pop those under here. So you can see we're starting to create a little bit of a corner or motif, depending on how you're looking at it. So I'm just going to get rid of these two symbols for now. The other thing to bear in mind is if you do delete symbols, they're going to stay put in here. So you can always retrieve them if you need to. So back in our assets panel, we can create a subcategory. So we're just going to go to the little V arrow here, create subcategory. Now we've got our assets and they can stay named like that. I'm going to rename assets 2 to being motifs. And to be able to get that all as one design, you want to group it. And we're going to drop that into motifs. And we can see that that arrives in that bottom corner. At least you could if my logo wasn't in the way. So let's just Make life a little bit easier. I'm going to pop the motif to the top so you can see there's our little asset here. Now, if I rotate this, and if it was a symbol, it would have updated in here. But because it's an asset, it's independent. So we can even then go, actually, let's do another one from that selection. And it's going to drop that in, like so. So straight away, we're giving ourselves a way of quickly building designs just simply by rotating. It doesn't take a lot of work. So we've kind of got a motif going. Let's make it a corner. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate our group. And let's rotate this back this way. And I'm going to flip it like so. So that it gets a little bit more of a corner feel to it. So if you think about corner, you're going to want it to kind of go round. Now, if you want to overlap an element so that it feels more joined up, can do. I think just there is fine. So I'm going to take those two elements and I'm going to group that one. And again, we can just resize that down. Now, the reason I'm resizing is I'm going to actually eventually get to do a frame. So we've got something that is coming in this way and out this way, so it's definitely a corner. So let's start another subcategory. And we'll rename that one. And we'll call this one corner or corners. And again, we can add from selection into the corners. And you could do several different corners. You could mix up the blend of the purple and the orange if you wanted to. I mean, you don't necessarily have to just stick to those colours either. So next we might take that corner, bring it down. And again, we'll duplicate it. And we'll flip vertically this time. And we'll bring that up there. Okay. So we've got the start of an arc, but we've got a gap in the middle. Don't panic just yet. What we're going to do is click off and let's bring in a few more of our elements. So we did save our flower center as a separate element. So let's bring in one of those because they can be quite good for kind of building out your design. So let's pop one there. And I'm going to do the same here. So we're kind of smoothing off our corner if you think of it like that. And we can pop one there and one on the outside there. So we're starting to infill, I think was the way I would phrase it. Now let's go for this one. So this one's a little bit of a plainer flower. And I don't mean that as a form of insult. So we can put that in there like so. Might rescue that flower center that's just hiding. If we click through, we should be able to find it. There we go. And I'm just going to press and hold shift and use the arrow key just to maneuver that where we want it. So that's looking pretty good and roughly where I want it. Let's just quick adjust that one so that it mirrors that top center. Select all and group. Now I'm going to move that slightly more on my paper, but you don't have to. Even if you were to add it to assets at that point, it would ignore the edge of your paper. So that's just something to bear in mind. And if you want to start a new subcategory, you can, but just for speed, I'm just going to add into corners. And again, we can duplicate that, flip it, and I'm just going to adjust that so it looks a bit more circular. There we go. That'll do nicely. And if you want to add in an extra flower down here, we can do. In fact, I think that could look quite good. So I'm going to take one of our alternate colour versions and let's just line that up there. And we'll line one up at the top. Now with this top copy, I'm just going to shrink it down slightly. Just helps your circle feel a bit more balanced. And just take that down. Okay. So now we can select all of those, group those, size it down if you want, but you don't have to. Now, if you do find it doing a few weird things, just let your computer catch up. It can be a bit laggy at this point. Add from selection, and there we go. We have our little circle frame. Now, previews, you're going to see that it's starting to cut off a little bit. They are square, so you can sometimes find that when your element is square, it can get a bit weird and wonderful in terms of cropping. And there you go. So we've looked at symbols and how we can use them to change designs to make them stretch further. We've looked at assets so that we can see how we can then apply those designs in different ways. So very quickly, let's change up the colour of our design. And all I'm going to do is just go into my group. If we do a little drop down, you can see that we can get back into all those symbols. And remember, any changes you make here are going to be applied back to our symbols panel at the top. So let's do a big shift to, and I'm not fancying the green. I don't really fancy the yellow either. Ooh. We could go more ready pink. So let's lighten that up. Let's add in some saturation, and you can see straight away that we're getting a lovely infusion of pink, and our symbols panel is updating so that now we have some pink. And we can do the same to our little flowers. So if you want to just click to get into them, just double click and keep double clicking, and it will cycle through until you get to the layer that you want. And then we can go selective color, and this time let's make it more pink, and yes, the yellow. So if I take that yellow out, you're still going to see some yellow. So if we go into neutrals, we'll take the yellow out, and you can see that it becomes a lot more pink. So tiny touch of yellow will give your pink a little bit of warmth, and with that, that might be exactly what you want. So thank you for watching me, and any questions on how I've created those individual elements, please just ask. I will keep them saved as well, so that if you want to copy, just reach out to me. Take care and bye.